keep it from going through these barricades and obstacles that were in there. So we just stayed there until the tide went out. So, you know, you go in when the high tide, and then when the tide goes out, you're standing there, or the ship is over there high and dry. So when the water receded, I looked out, and there's mines all over around us, on the right and behind us, on the left and everywhere. We're sitting in one little spot where there was no mine. Now, how did we guide that ship over there like that? Then we look in front of us, and there's 3 rows of obstacles. It's like jackstones with mines on each end of them, so that when you hit the ship, it just, you know, blows up the. But the skipper wasn't too worried about them, and says those wouldn't make that much damage, you know. But they had these big, all kinds of obstacles, 3 rows of them. So then the CBEs, which is another group, they started trying to pop off the mines with their rifles. Then they took chains and tied them to the obstacles, pulling them out. So they pulled out enough of those obstacles so they could make a path for us to get off. But before that, they had a mesh. It's like it's a steel mesh, and you just roll it, and you roll it down towards the ship, and it was about so that the trucks and the cannons we had on boards would sink in the sand. They would, you know, be able to pull out without sinking in the mud. So anyway, we opened up our doors, hatches, and lowered down the platform, and the soldiers got off onto the beach, and they made it okay. And we heard that within 3 hours they had stopped some tanks that were headed our way, and they had stopped them and salvaged the beach. So they were heroes. And while we was on the beach, I stupidly went out on the beach looking for shells, souvenirs. And I found a few, and then I started realizing those snipers could take a pot shot at me. I better get back on board ship. I did, and then comes 6, 7 o'clock, the water's coming back, and the Germans were getting the range on us, and they were starting to shoot shells, and they had to shoot them over the hill, and they were landing behind us. So the skipper was anxious to try and get us off the beach, so we had to wait for the water to rise. So around 8 o'clock, the water was fairly high, so he put the engines in reverse, and he put the power on the stern anchor to pull us off the beach, and pull back, and nothing would move. So we had to wait another 10, 15 minutes, and then we tried again. And almost 9 o'clock, we finally started pulling out and off. So I was hoping that when we pulled out, we wouldn't hit those mines that were in behind us also. So we pulled off, got the anchor back on the ship, and we backed up and turned around and started out full blast, full speed ahead to join the fleet that was out 5 miles out. And on the way out, everybody was congratulating us for being the first LSD to land their cargo intact on the beach. So we got congratulations for that. And that was the first day experience more or less the cargo. But we was ahead of all everybody else. So instead of staying and waiting for another day or two for them to unload their cargo and for us to go back to England to get another load, our skipper got on the and we headed back to England. So then we had to have radar and radio watch on our own, because we were on our own. So we was 4 hours on the radar, then 4 hours off, then 4 hours on radio, and then 4 hours off. So it was, we didn't have time to sleep more than 2.5 hours at most. So we got back to England, got another load. Took us a day or two to get loaded. Then we headed back to France, and we brought our load into France, but there was altogether different beach on the second trip in. They had sunk a bunch of ships and barges to cut the undercurrent of the water so that we'd be able to land without too much difficulty. So we unloaded our, and we were still one trip ahead of everybody else. And we headed back to England again afterwards for another load. So we got another load, and we was on our own, so we had radar and radio watch all at the same time. So on our third trip into France, we got halfway across the channel when we caught up with the fleet on the part that the second load that was going in. So we was on our third trip in, and they were on their second, and we caught up with the second one. So we laid off the radar and the radio watch, because at 5 o'clock in the morning the sun was up and we had caught up with them. And we were relaxed. So I went to sleep in my bunk around 5:30, and I woke up around 20 minutes of 8, and I looked up, and the guys were having breakfast. That's in the cruise quarters in the back part of the ship. And I wasn't that hungry, and I figured I need to sleep more than I need breakfast. So I just went back to sleep. So I was just dozing off when I felt my bunk go up. I knew we were hit. So I grabbed my life belt and I squeezed it. It had the cylinders in there for air, and then blew up my life jacket, the life belt, so that if I didn't make it, well, at least I would float and they would get, I don't know, I just did it automatically. So then everything went dark, and I came off my bunk, and I felt the water and everything come in. And then I saw light, and I thank God that it was still alive. And I had to try and get out of there.
Want to go to some questions at this time, Mr. Dean?
Okay, yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Yeah, it might help you. This is just push this. Why don't we go to the slides?
Okay, great. Great.
I don't know. This is a side view of the ship, 133. I was on the, what they call the stern, which is the rear part of the ship. And on the other side of that one, I was on the bow, which is the right side over there. The right side in the Navy is called, why so long?
Starboard? Starboard?
Yeah, starboard side.
Yep.
This is the starboard side of the 132. That's the bow doors that open, and then the ramp that comes down, and the cannons and the tanks roll off of that. This is one of those CBTs. Huh?
LCI or LCD?
LCDs, yeah. Yeah, it's smaller than an LCD. This is just a passenger. That's those are usually they use them from transport. They come down these. They put out these ropes, and a whole bunch of ropes in it, like a bag. And they just the whole side of the ship is all of those. Yeah, that's the way. That's off one of those small boats, yeah. And they go as close as they can to the beach, and then they have to walk off of there. Sometimes they go up to their waist, sometimes up to their chin in water. This is our ship, the LSD. That's when the bow doors are open and the ramp goes down, and they can drive off onto the beach.
Now, that's a Sherman tank in there, Stu, so look at how big that boat is. That tank fits in there with a lot of ease and a lot of room to spare, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But compared to a lot of other ocean-going boats in the Navy, this was a relatively small ship.
Yeah. Okay, now this is the beach that we were trying to get onto. On the far right was the English and the Canadians. And on the far left, it was Utah Beach. That one wasn't quite so bad. But Omaha Beach was the worst one of all. That's the second one from the left. The Gold, the Juno,
Sword.
and the Sword weren't as bad as the Omaha. Omaha was the one with the cliffs, and where all the casualties are. A great percentage of the casualties happened. And I think what my skipper did is go from the Omaha to the edge of Utah, where we unloaded our cargo, and that's how we got onto the beach. Now, unless there's another river between that low part of between Utah and Omaha, that's where I think we landed. But the second trip in, we landed on Omaha, and the third trip also after we got towed back into France, that's where we landed. This is a view of, it's pretty foggy like, and it's probably,
This was the beach at Omaha.
is that the Omaha Beach?
Yeah.
What I remember of Old Omaha Beach, it was a lot of cliffs high, and there was a lot of cabins or holes in it where the Germans were shooting from with their 88s and all kinds of machine guns. Wow, this is our LSD-133 with all kinds of boats tied up alongside of it. Now, that looks like it might have been when we were half a mile out.
This was after you were hit.
That's after we were hit? Okay, well, then it's, yeah.
And that's the
that was-
damage in the bow.
Okay, now I was on the starboard or the right side on that back part over there. By the way, everyone on that ship, except 3 of us, were killed. One of them drowned because he jumped in the water trying to swim to another ship, but never made it. Halfway across, he went under. Just another guy that stopped me from jumping in because I was thinking of diving in myself and helping him. But he smartened me up and told me, hang on. And we finally got the door open so that we could go topside and get out of that hole. I went back in that hole a day later, that stump, you know, that dead meat was, and I went to see one of my radio men. He would look as if he was sleeping. He was dead. The concussion of the explosion draws all the breath out of your system. And for some reason or other, none of them survived that blast. I don't know what that is.
This one here is looking down into the bow. That's what it said. You guys that are good with computers, like who isn't, right? With you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
You go Google LST-133 and you can find all this stuff. There's actually motion picture on YouTube of the 133 going through the water. I haven't had a chance to show you that one.
Okay.
This is looking down into the part of the ship that was hit, and thank God this is black and white because there's a lot of carnage, according to the caption that you can see down in the hull. And this is after it was dry docked when you went back to England. You might want to describe that. You got about 3-4 minutes left of that.
Okay, well, I got off that ship when we went back. We were towed the rest of the way into France, and they welded some plates on our ship so they wouldn't crack any further, keep it intact. By the way, I finally got out of that hole when I pulled on a cable, and it broke, and I thought to myself I could have gotten electrocuted if it had been alive. So I tested another one, and that one was okay, and I finally pulled myself out of that hole. And what happened is the floor, we call it the deck. The deck just folded up between that and the bulkhead, which is the side of the ship. And that's what saved me from the concussion. So the concussion went up to the side of me, and I was in between the floor of the deck and the bulkhead, which is the wall, more or less. So I got out of there, and we tried to open the door, and we couldn't open it by ourselves. We had to wait until somebody came in from topside and push so that we could get it open. And I also saw one of my buddies with a locker opener, so I tried to push that locker off to get to him. And I thought, this is where you get superhuman strength, and I couldn't get it up more than 2-3 inches. And then the boatswain mate came in, and he helped me push that locker off. And I grabbed his feet, he grabbed the shoulders and pulled him out of there. Then he threw him over his shoulder and went up to the side of the ship. I looked at my feet, and all I had was my stockings. I said, I better get on topside and see what the situation is before I get caught down here. So I went topside, and the fellow that had stopped me from jumping into the water was over there crying, telling the boys to go get me, that I was still down there. So I got up and went to my radio shack and got the in these occasions, you're supposed to grab all the confidential material, put it in a sack, and give it to your skipper, so that if we're going to sink, he can take care of that. So I did my duty as I saw it, and Then went back to the Radio Shack and just waited. They towed us into France, we unloaded our load, went back out, they towed us back into England, and then
Then the bell rang and the period was over.
Mr. Chief, thank you very much for being here today with us. I'd love to keep them here, and I'm sure they'd like to stay, but school has rules about that, so guys, we will see you. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Jerry Jean, who is a U.S. Navy veteran of World War II, who was a radio man on an LST, which is Landing Ship Tank. And he was there at D-Day. He was at Omaha Beach, which was the worst place to be in France on that day. All the other 4 beaches were a lot easier by comparison. So Mr. Jean is here to share some of his thoughts and perspectives with you. So Mr. Jean, thank you very much.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I hope you get something out of it. I decided to join the Navy after Pearl Harbor on December 7th. I wanted to join that day, but I cooled off the next day, because that was on a Sunday, Pearl Harbor. And the next day, Monday, I decided that I wasn't going to join right off quick. I had some more enjoying of life to do. So I waited until September 2nd, or close to September, the following year, 1942. And I joined the Navy on my mother's birthday, September 2nd, 1942. I decided to join the Navy because my dad had been in the Army, World War I, and he had to sleep in foxholes, and that was in the mud, and they got gas, they got shell shocked, and all kinds of, so I decided the Navy, at least they got bunks that you can sleep in. You don't have to sleep in the dirt. So I was sent to boot camp in Rhode Island in September, October. Took my 8 weeks of boot camp training. Had a short holiday or furlough before I was shipped to Norfolk, where we was going to get assigned to a ship or a crew. Someone came by and said, we're taking volunteers for a radio. Anybody interested in being a radio man? Fall in over here. Well, I was one of the first ones to jump to that opportunity because I had been a fan of radio all the time I was a kid. I enjoyed listening to hillbilly or bluegrass music. It was called hillbilly then, and country music, and I dreamed of being a DJ, but never did. But anyway, I wanted to get into radio, so I joined the radio. And of course it was for LCIs, which is a small boat, and you didn't have to have 8, 9 months of radio training like they did on the regular radio. So we had 8 or 9 weeks, and I buckled down, and I was able to copy 8 or 9 to 12 words per minute. Of course, the regular radio men were copying 28 to 32 words a minute. The reason I say that is because for my Christmas vacation or Christmas furlough, I came home to get married, and my communication officer told me that if I was going to get married and needed more time to let him know, and he would grant it. So I did send him a telegram, but I don't think he got it, and I never got the. But anyway, I went to AWOL because I took the extra time, and when I went back to Norfolk, I was AWOL, but the officers told me, he says, how come you didn't show up? I said, well, I was supposed to have an extension to get married, but he says, okay, well, to get married, yeah. All right, that's enough punishment for you, so go ahead. And he gave me a break. So I went to, so I had lost my crew for the LCIs, because they went to Texas, Brownsville, Texas. But I was glad not to be on those LCIs, because the experience I'd had before on the LCI while we were doing maneuvers on the Chesapeake Bay, they used an oil heater, and that stunk, and it was smoky, and that wasn't good. That wasn't healthy. I got cough, cold, and I was glad to get out of there. But I was assigned instead to an LST, which is a much bigger ship. But the radio men on that ship were 8-9 months compared to my 8-9 months, and they were just regular seamen, and I was rated third-class petty officer. So that didn't fit too good with my buddies. I was in charge of them, and they knew more than I did. But I had a little age on them. They were only 18, 19, or maybe 20. I was 22 at the time. So anyway, I got into trouble, and they decided to send me some more schooling. So I got off that crew and did some practicing on taking code, and I got my code up to about 24 words a minute. Then they assigned me to another LST, and I was able to keep up with those boys. And we left Norfolk, went to Boston to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and from Nova Scotia to St. John's, New Brunswick. Then we started out across the ocean. Of course, we had a big LCT on board our ship, and the weather was real rough, and the rain and snow, all it did was freeze, and it made us heavier and heavier and heavier. So we had to go chip ice, so that that was our job until to keep the boat from being too heavy. Then we hit the storms, and we had waves 100 feet high. When you get up on top of the wave, we could see way over. Then when you get into the bottom of the wave, all you see is a wave in front of you and a wave behind you. And when the propeller, the screw, came out of the water on account of the wave, then you could hear the screw spinning fast. And then when the water wave caught up to it, it would bounce the ship, and we didn't know what was happening. So it was very nerve-wracking to put up with the ship bouncing in and out of those waves. Then somebody would open up a hatch, that's a door, and then they would sometimes bang close as the ship was rolling. And we thought, well, we got hit. No, it was just a hatch. So it was nerve-wracking. So it took us almost a month, 4 weeks, to get across the ocean. Now that's a picture of a LST. It's yeah, we was in New York. That's where we started. And we had an LCT.
Smaller boat on there?
Yeah, that LCT is on top of the deck there. When you have to launch them, they have a ballast where they take all the water off on one side and load it with water on the other side, so the ship will tilt. and then, well, it was the other way, and then you could slide that LCT right off, and it would slide off into the water, and that's how we launched them after we got to England. But we had to carry them from the United States, from this country to Europe. And when we got to Europe, it took us almost about 4 weeks, I think. We came down in between Ireland and Scotland. Then we went along the coast of England. We first hit, I think it was Falmouth and Weymouth Harbor and Southampton. And we did a lot of maneuvers while we was in England. That's from the month of February, March, April, May. We would practice landings, and we could see the English planes. They were fast. They were traveling. They were fast. They would go 400 or 500 miles an hour, I think. Yeah, that ship is